so this coming August, David and I, freshly armed with degrees in zoology from Texas A&M and teaching certificates, arrived in Houston and set out one Sunday morning looking for this church that somebody had recommended to us called Cypress Bible Church, where we couldn't find it, and but we ended up in the evening service because we went back home and asked, now where was that church that you said we should go to? So in 1978, we came to Cypress Bible Church, and we feel like Cypress has nurtured us and formed us in so many ways. We're very grateful for Cypress and the people that have invested in our lives in discipling us and sending us out to Asia. We were in the Philippines for 26 years with an organization called OMF, and that's the same organization Mark and Rebecca are joining. We did a variety of things. We were in church planting. We helped start a seminary for pastor training. I taught at a school for missionary children. And then our last 5 years there, we were in an administrative member care role, caring for the 100 missionaries that our organization had in the Philippines. And 5 years ago, we came back, and we're doing something similar still with OMF. We're caring for our missionaries, kind of drawing on our own failures, our own experiences to extend training and care to the missionaries that our organization sends to Asia, especially when they come back and do those transitions, when they come home for home assignment, home for what used to be called furlough, or and then we help them go back, hopefully more refreshed and ready to go. In the course of that, we had 2 kids, just for you to know. We have a son, Andrew, and his wife, Becca, and 1 grandchild who live in Jakarta, Indonesia. So they ended up going back to Asia. And we have a daughter, Katie, who works for Christian Brothers Automotive here in Houston at their headquarters. I can't speak louder. I have a soft voice. So that's us, a little bit about us. We want to help you understand a little bit about what missionaries go through so that you can care for them well. So our goals today, we would like to create some awareness that may be new awareness for you. We would like to dig a little bit into what does the Bible say about caring for missionaries, and we'd like to arm you with some practical ways to care for missionaries. But to start, I would like to know a few things that you already do and you've experienced as an individual or as a class in how you have cared for missionaries. So just shout it out, well, don't shout, but just share with the group. What are some ways you've already cared for missionaries? It can be as an individual or as a community or as the whole part of the whole church.
Financial support.
Financial support.
Care packages.
Care packages.
Emails and letters.
Great. Emails and letters. It is a little easier now than when we went out 30 years ago.
Prayer.
Visiting with them when they're on furlough.
Yeah, taking time to spend time with them.
Helping their kids get incorporated in the local body when they come back.
That's a really important part, and we have been on the receiving end of that. Those are great ideas. So maybe I would just encourage you to keep on doing those, and then maybe you'll come away today with a few other ideas as well. We like to either put missionaries on a pedestal, like say they're somewhat different than us. Well, we don't like being on a pedestal because it's so easy to fall off. So I'd like to spend a little time just with you telling me, how are missionaries just like you? What are ways that missionaries are just like you.
Raising families.
Raising families. They get sick.
You get lonely.
Lonely. They get lonely.
Car problems, if there's a car.
Okay.
Water problems.
Car problems.
Relationship challenges, financial challenges.
Relationship challenges, really?
That's huge.
Any others?
Financial concerns.
Financial concerns?
Coworker issues.
Co-worker issues? Yep.
Husband-wife issues.
Say that again louder.
Husband-wife issues.
Yeah. Husband and wife issues.
Raising kids issues too.
So you have a lot of wisdom and life experience that you already bring to caring for missionaries, because in many ways they're just like you. And so I'd encourage you to remember that too. Knock them off the pedestal and approach them as ordinary people in maybe some extraordinary circumstances, but ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. And draw upon your own experience what God has taught you in caring for one another in your class. You can use that in caring for the missionaries. And I think, David, I'm going to call you up to...
So knock us off our pedestals gently, please. Yeah. So we have a handout, but we're going to give it to you as we as when we get a little bit further down on the thing. And we'll give it at the end. And on that handout, it'll be a few of the things we talk about, and specifically the practical things you can do. And we wanted to give you that. So Doris asked you how we like. So my question is, what are some of the unique challenges that missionaries experience as they live and work in these cross-cultural settings? So you support the Perezes, and where do they live? Indonesia, okay. And what do they do? You're a pilot, okay. Sorry, I'm being a little bit whoa, this thing goes up and down.
Sorry, we all hate that podium. We'll give it to you.
I will not lean on it. So what are some of the unique challenges missionaries experience as they live and work in a cross-cultural setting? Language.
Language barriers.
I'm sorry?
The language barrier.
Okay, so language barriers. Perezes, they don't speak Texan in Indonesia?
They probably do, but you know.
They don't know.
Right. What are some other unique challenges?
Culture.
I'm sorry?
Culture.
Cultural, like what does that mean?
Like differences in the culture of the people they go to compared to the life you understand here.
So people do things differently? What do you think they might do differently in Indonesia or Thailand, where the Phillips are going to go? Food, okay. They might eat a little bit different. They might not have chips and salsa. Okay, what you wear, clothes,
Shopping.
shopping.
they worship.
Even
How they worship.
the meeting of people and what the norms are as far as getting to know you and interacting. Can women just openly interact with men too, or is it very much women are just for women? I mean, there's so many different things that we aren't used to at all.
Yeah, I know. So there's some things that are kind of weird in other cultures, aren't they? And sometimes we might get a little uncomfortable if those things happen, right? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not offended.
That's the thing, like in the Philippines, the guys, if you're really close friends, you walk in and they'll hold your hand, right? And then of course the ladies. And so this one friend, we were walking down the road and he holds my hand. And I thought, okay, I'm in. cool, be relaxed. I'm in. But I was dying inside, right? No, it's not an issue. I don't think so much for the ladies, but if it was a guy. Yeah. Okay. What are some other things that are unique challenges?
It could be a country with like an oppressive government.
Yeah, and what might be some of the implications of a government that is less than democratic?
There's no Chick-fil-A or Walmart.
Okay, I didn't expect that.
Limits on speech and the practice of religion.
Okay, so yeah.
Visas, or whether you can get a visa and for what and things like that. Can you get a visa that allows you to do what you do legally in their country, or is it a little bit almost covert?
Right. Yeah, we're fixing to make a trip in May to China for our first time, and I'm trying to think what should I not do, and not so much. What's that?
Also, the application, even just when we got the application.
Visa application. Yeah. So
we work for
okay.
a Christian organization, so how much to say or not to say? Not
Can
to
I put
lie,
that
but
I
what
actually
not
work for
to
this
do.
organization? Like there was this one question that said, so have you ever worked for or contributed to I think a Christian organization? Oh, okay. And I said, I have given money to Cypress Bible Church. So, I didn't put the other things in. Anyway, we ended up we're life coaches, and then I gave this website that this organization that trained us, and anyway, we got 10-year multiple entry visas. So. Good.
Israel, you can't even say that you're a missionary.
What's that?
Like if you go to Israel to do missions, like you can't even mention the word missionary.
Yeah, that you might not get in. Right,
Yeah.
right. Any other things you've thought about?
Hygiene.
Hygiene.
What?
Hygiene.
Some cultures don't.
You want to expand that?
Do they take baths?
Yeah, that's a good way to say
How
it.
often?
Well,
Do they use deodorant?
It's interesting because in the Philippines they're very clean. I mean, they can live in a little bitty shack, dirt floors. And they sweep their dirt floors, and they will come out ready to go to work, and they were just like, and actually, it's some of our missionaries that they said, could you please tell that single guy that he needs to use deodorant and he needs to brush his teeth. So sometimes it's the missionaries actually that are a hygiene problem, but it can go both ways. You're right. Thank you.
Yeah, just differences in standards, whichever way it goes.
Right.
Medical
Okay.
care.
What's that?
Medical care.
Okay, medical care. Yes, a lot of our guys in Asia. We only work in Asia. They're coming out to either Bangkok or to Singapore for medical treatment. Yeah, but others in Taiwan. I mean, it's great. So
Transportation?
yes, learning the different transportations and learning to drive in Manila. I enjoyed driving in Manila. Doris, the last 5 years, she said, I'm not going to drive anymore. For me, it's like it's a game. It's a dance. There are sets of rules, but they're a little bit different than our rules here. If there's a space, occupy it. If you're there first, you got the right. Anyway, so yeah, transportation. Doris, you have a thing for us? So let me put up here 10 challenges that we sort of came up with that and I'll give you these later. Oh, okay. Is this the best place to put them? Am I going to be walking in front of it, or maybe you can see around it? And Dylan, when do we need to before we get the hook?
12:15 the latest.
Oh, that long? I thought you said, okay. I was thinking
Good.
12. Okay, keep going.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Until people start wiggling, we're good. Okay. So these are a few challenges that are unique to cross-cultural missionaries. Take a look at it. What might be some of your questions, comments?
This is not a comprehensive list.
Not exhaustive.
At all. We just picked
No.
10.
Maybe 10 that people sometimes don't think about always. But actually, you've actually got a lot of them already. Any questions of these?
The family members in home country, is it more like people criticizing, or is it you're not communicating as often as you would, or?
Great question.
You're separated. Grandparents don't see their grandkids, or their children. You know, you're not there for birthdays and anniversaries and all those kinds of things that build family at home.
Right.
You know, and this little nuclear family that's way far away doesn't have that support system either. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. But it could also be, I know we talked to several people, they're criticized by their family members back in America. Well, we give you support, and you're going to a hotel or a vacation. You know, I mean, do you think that's a wise thing to do, or you know, you've done the missionary thing. It's not time to come back. You know, or Doris, anything else you're thinking of there?
There can be, especially if the parents are not believers, there can be this, I paid for you to go through college and get this wonderful degree and you're wasting it. There's some pressures like that, especially among our Asian American coworkers. Their parents put a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah. And it's also parents, aging parents. So a lot of guys will return because their parents are aging, and you know they feel they're responsible now to care for them. Another one might be children, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. College age or adult children. I mean, we had a period of time for about a year. Our son just, you know, he broke up with a girlfriend. He was in college, and we didn't know if we were going to get a call in the middle of the night saying something tragic had happened, and really very, very difficult. So these are some of the things. There's just a lot of different issues with family members. Yeah. Other things. Questions on any of these?
What's the primary source of unclear job description and expectations? Is that the sending organization?
Or it's just the realities on the ground when you get there. Like you may have one set of expectations based off people that were in, I don't know, like the neighboring county, village, whatever, and then you go to your post and it's actually completely different than what you expected because it's a...
Or the team you join handles things differently than maybe the sending organizations, you know, hierarchy says that they're going to be handled, but in reality they're handled differently.
Yeah, these guys are good. I don't know if you answered the question. It's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, certainly sometimes you train. Okay, I'm going to train. I'm going to be a church planter, and I'm going to work with Buddhist peoples. Then you get there, and the team has dissolved, and so you're a new worker. Do I just go out there on my own? I mean, would the Phillips, would they want to go to Isan without a team if the whole team had dissolved? And then what do you do? Certainly the Phillips are going to work in a multicultural group, so they're going to be probably the only Americans, so they're going to be Swiss and Dutch, I know for sure. And I don't know if you've worked with them, but they're pretty hardcore. They have certain values about work and ethic, and I mean, I was talking to a gal in Taiwan just in the last few weeks, coaching her, and it's like, oh, these Australians, they don't work hard, you know. They're not doing what they should be doing. You know, he's out there riding his bike and doing this, and she's Chinese, ethnically Chinese, and she's wanting him to really put in the time. And so, the expectations of team members and the job description, there may be a gap, or there may not even be a job description in some cases. And if you're in language school, what's your job description? I mean, you go to language school, and then what? And it's very, very, for certain personalities, that is very challenging. For others of us, I love it. But Doris, she really would like to know structure and what is expected of her and when. And then, of course, time. When are you ever finished? When are, you know, it's not like an 8 to 5 job. Any others?
I imagine it's difficult to define and measure your success and effectiveness.
Yeah. Is that on there?
No, it's
No.
not. I think it is part of us.
Part of the...
Yeah. We lumped quite a few things.
I
in
thought we
together.
had celebration.
I know, we did actually.
How did it get
somehow
missing?
we lost one in the translation.
Yeah, there
but
was, we
had-
were editing, but yeah, a celebration of success was one of them on there. Yeah, how do you measure that? If you're working with Muslims and it's or Thai, and Thai, others have told me it's a 2 to 3 year process before, from a time a person is interested, time they start believing, and even then, do they stay with it, or do they go back to their culture? And yeah, that's a great one. Celebrations and successes. Okay, so what am I supposed to do now for that? Challenges, questions. Do I need to do the five domains? Yes? Okay. So these challenges create needs, right? And we could, do we have a thing on that? No sticky note? Okay. So there are 5 different domains of needs, and you're going to write them up?
You can erase.
Yeah, I'll
erase
move
that to the
these
left.
in.
Okay, so the first one would be physical needs. The second one would be spiritual needs. Third one would be social needs. Fourth one would be like psycho-emotional needs. And the fifth one would be intellectual, vocational needs. So each of these challenges would have needs in each of those. Perhaps marriage and parenting might have a physical need, might have a spiritual need, emotional, psychological, vocational need, intellectual. Maybe you want to read some books about marriage and parenting. Anyway, we're going to give you a chance to think about what some of the needs might be in these in a minute, but not right now. So, okay. I think what I'm supposed to do now is talk about biblical basis a little bit. So is this thing we're talking about caring for our missionary? Is this biblical? And I think this is 2 guys in the Bible, so it's it seems like it's a legitimate question. And I understand you've been in 1 Peter. 1 Peter context. I hope I'm not saying much I didn't say, but hopefully I got it right. I just sort of irritating. But who is 1 Peter written to? It's written to people that were in exile, right? Exile, the diaspora. They were people that were undergoing some suffering. Does this sound right for 1 Peter? Have I got the right book? Yep. Yeah. These are people that were living in a non-Christian world, but hostile to them. They were experiencing slander, injustice. These guys were involved in proclamation ministry, because Peter encourages them, right, to proclaim the truth. They were experiencing spiritual warfare. And what are some things that Peter reminded them in this context? And so the context actually sounds a lot like some of the missionaries, doesn't it? A non-Christian world, a hostile environment, exiles, and what are some things that Peter reminds them of?
Being tested, your faith being tested actually purifies you.
Okay, great.
Become like gold.
Okay, so there's an end product of this suffering and testing.
Live a holy life.
Okay, to live a holy life, that's an important, even in the midst of this crooked and perverse world. Yeah, others.
Don't be surprised by the suffering.
Don't be
Surprised?
at the suffering. Okay, yeah. So another one. Was there another one there?
You need to understand that their suffering, as they act wholly through that, actually becomes a testimony to those who are persecuting them, so that they will come to know Christ.
Yeah, and this is a testimony of a lot of missionaries as they have stayed the course in the midst of a difficult situation, and people say, "Why did you come here? Why did you do this in such a difficult context?" Yeah.
Women need to be submissive to their husbands.
Yes. Yeah. So he talks about rewards, right? In 1 Peter, he talks about God's faithfulness and his protection of you. He talks about the resource of the Word of God, this milk of the Word, this obedience to the truth that leads to a purification of your souls. He talks about their identity as Christians. How does he describe people in 1 Peter? How does Peter address them? You are who? Chosen race, royal priesthood. This is the test. Yeah, I mean that great passage in chapter 1? Where is it? I wrote some of these down. Chosen race, royal priesthood, holy nation, a people of his own, so that you can proclaim the excellencies of the virtues of the one who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Talks about the body, that you are not in the suffering, you're not on your own. And he talks about the goal of your faith, the salvation of your souls, grow with respect to salvation. And then he gives them some encouragements, some challenges. What might be some of the things that Peter addresses that missionaries would also face that we've talked about?
Bad government.
What's that?
Bad government.
Okay, government, yeah. So what do you do when you have... What does he say about the government? He says honor the government, right? Honor your leaders. Submit to your leaders, yes? Okay.
Keep your conduct honorable so people will keep all of you.
Okay, so that's another way to respond to an unjust government. What are some other things in Peter that might be applicable to missionaries in the context? Let's talk about relationships. What does it say about relationships?
That you're like one body, you're God's people, grafted in, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And as a body, people have... are there certain people up here with the gifts and the rest of you are just peons and you just sit there and listen? He talks about the body. Each one has their gift, and what are they supposed to, each one is supposed to use their gift, right? And of course, this missionary is very important. What about husband and wife? Husband and wife? I think that's in there, right? There's so that's, he recognizes that. What about co-workers? How would Peter would address co-workers?
Be of one mind.
Could be of one mind.
Submit to your unreasonable bosses.
Yes.
Tender-hearted and humble.
Boy, I've had so much trouble with some of my superiors. It's not been easy. Yeah, be harmonious, sympathetic, be compassionate, be humble, show hospitality. Talks about. Does he talk about prayer at all in 1 Peter? Can't remember. What do you think? He does actually. He does. Sorry. Yeah, be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of prayer. He says, verse 4, chapter 4, verse 7. Yeah. Anyway, so 1 Peter. All right, I just wanted you to kind of look at that. But anyway, so. Consider that. How is this, whatever you're studying in the scriptures, how does this relate? How does this help me to relate, encourage, and apply to missionaries in America? Okay, am I talking too much? I am a little bit, all right. Okay. A passage, sorry, it's too much stuff. And we really feel important of action about this. So let's look at a passage very quickly. 1 Corinthians chapter 16. 1 Corinthians 16. 3, 4, 15, 16. Four verses. So what do y'all usually do? What is it? You read King James, right? No. Oh, okay. And women are wearing pants, so I guess. Okay. So 1 Corinthians 16, 15, NIV, NASB, what do y'all do? NASB, okay, I've got that. Okay, so 15 to 18, 1 Corinthians 16. So now I urge you, brethren, you know the household of Stephanas, that they were the first fruits of Achaia, that they have devoted themselves for the ministry to the saints, that you also be in subjection to such men and to everyone who helps in the works and labors. And I rejoice over the coming of Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus because they have supplied what was lacking on your part, for they have refreshed my spirit and yours. Therefore, acknowledge, probably better translation, recognize such men. So Paul is writing this. He's in Ephesus, about 300 miles away. He's writing back to the Corinthian church. And Stephanus, Fortunatus, and Achaicus have been visiting Paul, and they have come out of the Corinthian church. And so Paul is writing back and writing about these guys. The first thing, several things. I'd rather use this as a discussion, but just for time, I'll just sort of dump it a little bit. So the first thing, these guys are known. They're actually probably leaders within the Corinthian church, at least Stephanus. We don't know Fortunatus and Achaicus, were they his household, were they slaves, servants. But anyway, they're well known. They have had a ministry. They have had a ministry of service in the body, and Paul is saying this ministry of service in the body actually continues as they come to visit me in Ephesus. Another thing, they came to visit him. They could have waited until Paul returned, but they decided to go there. In verse 17, it says, they supplied what was lacking from you. So Paul seems to be saying that I had needs in Ephesus, and maybe he's saying maybe I expected that you might help with some of those needs. We know in Philippians there weren't a lot of people that were helping with his financially with this ministry in his life. But so he said there's some lacks, and these guys met that which was lacking. A beautiful expression. He says in verse 18, what does he say? He says, they have, what's it say? They have refreshed my spirit and yours. So these guys that came from the church to visit and care for Paul, maybe they brought a letter, maybe they brought a care package. He says, they have refreshed my spirit, but at the same time, they're doing this also as refreshes yours as a church. So as we care for missionaries, hopefully we're not being a burden on them, but we are refreshing their spirit, and it's a mutual kind of thing. It's a mutual refreshing. I read a great article last night about Paul uses it 4 times, this word, refresh. And it's used about a half dozen. It's used in, Jesus uses it. I come to all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Maybe a little bit different meaning there, but the same word. So rest, refreshment, renewal. This is something these guys did. It seems to be Paul talks about this being, they're devoted. So it seems to be there's a devotion, there's a systematic, regular activity. They discerned that it was a need, and they decided to meet it. Interesting, he says in verse 16, what does he say? What's the
subject?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So it's the word submissive, same in Hebrew, Ephesians 5. So maybe this is related to their being leaders in the church. I kind of like. I'm thinking maybe it has something to do with you submit to them, but also they're a model for you. You follow their example. And then he says, verse 16. He says, be in subjection, and to everyone who helps in the work and labors. So I think what Paul is saying there, and of course he's got this model, so Stephanus, Fortunatus, and Achaicus, so 3 people are there, and then he talks about everyone who helps in the work and labor. So the takeaway for me is that this missionary care thing is a team. You can't just have one person in a class doing it. That's why Dylan is saying we want to expand this so everybody is involved. And then the last thing he says that I'll point out, he says, recognize them. It's a command. NIV kind of softens it and says, recognize NIV. What does NIV say? Yeah, they deserve recognition in NIV, but actually NASB has it acknowledge, or it could be recognize these guys. So just a summary: missionary care is important. It should be repeated. It should be expanded and involved as a team. It's part of the service to the body. It can supply what is lacking to the missionary. It refreshes the spirit of missionary and of the church. It's a team effort, and it requires labor. Another passage, 3 John, it talks about when you care for those missionaries, traveling evangelists out there. Actually, what happens is you actually become part of the work. You're co-workers with the work, with the truth. So that's another. Okay, so so do I need to do anything, or are you gonna do it now?
You skipped the whole section, but that's okay.
Did I skip? Did I skip something? No, I didn't skip anything.
That's all right.
You're talking about the ranking?
No.
Okay.
Just
Stay here?
Yeah, stay for a second.
Okay.
So before we move on to the last little bit,
We do this all the time, so it's good. We're good.
yeah, he flew through that 1 Corinthians passage. So as you think about what that 1 Corinthians passage, what has God been drawing your attention to in that passage? No?
Well, just that it is our job to do that. I mean, it is, if we're part of the body, then we help to support part of our body that's gone out, and that there's a joy, hopefully for them, and providing for some of their needs. But it's also a joy for us because we can't go with, where they are going. And so by being a team member, so to speak, of helping to support them and all brings joy to us as well and to the body at large.
The one group or person or church may not be meeting all of their needs. It may take more than one.
Yeah, that's a terrific point. And we normally do a training on missionary care. We can do a whole day's worth of training, and we're trying to condense in 40 minutes just a little taste, and maybe give you a taste that will make you hunger for more. But one thing we spend some time on is that there are circles of care. The missionary themselves has some responsibility for their own care, but then there's also their family, their co-workers, their church, their sending churches, their agencies, and so I appreciate that point. We don't have time to go into all of them right now. Yes.
Paul's kind of lifting them up for their devotion to the service.
So stand on that a little bit.
Well, it seems like he's saying it's necessary, and so he's saying, look, these guys are the example of what's needed in order to accomplish this.
You may get missionary prayer letters. I mean, we send them out, and I will tell you now, it's agony for us to write those letters. It's really a spiritual battle, and sometimes people say, it's a spiritual battle to write those prayer letters, and Satan really wants to attack us. There's all kinds of emotions in ourselves when we write them. We don't want to glorify ourselves, we want to glorify God, but how do we write about what we're doing? And it just, anything he can do to keep us from writing them. But often we say in there, you are our partners, and we really do mean that. We cannot do it on our own. So I love that Paul recognizes the
And we
role
don't
that
just
you
mean
play.
financially.
Yes. And so that he highlights that without you, the Perezes would not be able to do what they're doing, and the Phillips as well. We wanted to take a couple challenges
Yeah.
and do this. That was under you.
Oh, that was what I did?
Yeah.
Oh.
So
okay.
if you want to do that, just do one. Okay.
Oh yeah, you're right. I was supposed to do that. I forgot.
If you just want to do
Okay.
one
Okay.
and explain it, and then we'll pass out the handout.
Okay.
So they
Yep,
can
yeah. Sorry, I just totally missed that. Yeah.
And one thing I meant to say was, we also do a lot of training on how to care for missionaries when they're back home. But that's almost a whole nother topic. And so we tried to focus today on your role when people are actually, like Paul in Ephesus, how the Corinthians cared for him. So we're emphasizing a little bit more today on how you can care when they're thousands of miles away. And then if you'd like us back another time, we can focus more on when they're back here in the home country, how we can help you help them.
So we've identified these 10 challenges that missionaries uniquely face. And we said coming out of those 10 challenges, they have there's 5 domains of needs, categories of needs, and so let's take one of these challenges and see what kind of needs we could identify. Which one would you like to do?
What about the financing? Because
Okay.
I think about when you out there, I mean, with OMF, does the church support them and send them money, or do you, while you're doing the work you're supposed to do, spiritually, do you go and get a job to support yourself?
Ooh, good questions. Okay. Yes.
You know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll do. I wasn't going to pick that one, but that's okay. So budgeting and finances, and hopefully we'll get your question answered as we go through this.
Yeah.
What might be? And you can pick any of these categories for the needs. So budgeting and finances. What might be a category of need, and tell us which category it goes under. What might be a need that arises out of that challenge? Physical.
Vocational.
But emotional and psychological too.
Okay, so let's get specific. Physical. How would that be a physical need?
I would say spiritual.
Well,
Show me the money.
yeah, can you what kind of apartment and all that kind of
Okay, so all of those kind of physical needs. Somebody said emotional.
Yeah, I think being able to have the money in their budget so that they can withdraw once in a while to regroup as a family. I know that sometimes they have to leave a country for a visa purposes. Well, do they have the budget to actually do that, or do they go in the hole when there's an absolute have to leave the country for a week or whatever? But there's those times when you have to pull away a little bit, and so does the budget handle that?
I think you're reliant on others, having to rely on others and not having total control over
But do you think that's hard? we were one home assignment. We were back and we were visiting a church, and this lady comes up to me, and we don't know anybody, and says, "Oh, I know why you're here. You're here asking for money." And, I was so angry actually, and I just said, "No, we're not." But that's a perception, right? You see, missionary. And that's one reason people are afraid of us. I think we're going to ask them for money. Oh, so it's the psychological, the emotional drain of that. Trust me, over 30 plus years, yeah. Other potential needs in this budgeting, sure.
Yeah, I said spiritual because money and it doesn't work.
Yeah, so how might that be a spiritual need?
Well, because I think about when Johnny and I, we were in the mission field. First, we went and scout for 1 week to find out where we were going to live, because the church didn't support us. We went on our own free will, give up anything, to win as many as possible. So for us, it was a spiritual battle, because one, we had to get a job on our own. We had 3 small children. And so spiritually, we had to really rely on prayer and our time together, how we're going to map out, our neighborhood and sharing our faith, go find our physical job, and then we have to do what we were purposely there for, which is our mission, our area. And then so for us, for me, it was a spiritual battle trying to do both. Like, what kind of job am I gonna get? I can't live beyond my means because I'm not there for that. I'm trying to win as many as possible. So I gotta find a job where, you know, there's roof over our head and food on the table, because there was no one was gonna give us that. That's a decision we, you know, we made a huge sacrifice. So spiritually, it's a lot, because for me, it was a lot of prayer and really trusting and praying for spiritual eyes where God would lead me. So I think it's
Just to add that a little bit, and then there's the temptation to think about, if I wasn't doing this, I could make so much more money and live a totally different lifestyle.
That maybe that comes in here. You know, you have mind games, and you kind of go, yeah, that's right. I'm on the spiritual. Hudson Taylor is our founder, and he said that God's work will never lack God's supply.
God's work done in God's way.
God's work done in God's way will never lack God's supply. And another one is, we move men and women through faith by prayer alone. So, you see, so if I'm not getting finances, something wrong with me? Yeah? Or have I missed God's calling? So, huge spiritual implications of that. Yeah. Any others on this one?
Socially, you may not have as much as your peers.
Certainly when you return to America, and and people say, "Oh, let's go out to eat," and kind of looking.
But I mean, even depending on where you live, if fellowship is really far away, you have to pay money traveling.
Okay.
I mean, it could still affect you socially.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe, you know, like sometimes we'll talk, because we meet with people all the time, all week, and we'll listen, and we say, you know, I think what you need to do is you need to take a vacation. Why don't you, maybe once a month, could you think about going to Bangkok? Now, it's easy for us to say that. But, you know, maybe they haven't budgeted for that. And of course, then you go to Bangkok, and you got to get a hotel, and so... Yeah. So sometimes the resources aren't there to do the things that maybe you need to do to survive.
There was one more, and then maybe we should.
Yes.
I don't know exactly which category, maybe social or psychological, but I was just thinking about the accountability and feeling like, you know, like you were just talking about taking a vacation. Well, if I take a vacation, what are my supporters going to think? Or if
If
I post a picture of my kids in this really nice dress, even though I bought it for $1 at a garage sale, my supporters might think that I spent $100 on this dress, and that's their money. And just that whole mental battle.
That is huge. There's this nice article that somebody wrote about. It's called Guiltitude, and we send it to a lot of our missionaries. It's like, you know, so that you don't feel guilty when you do something that is life-giving. That is, and actually the reality is, except for a few family members back in the U.S. maybe, most people say, "Oh, we bless you for that." But we have this thing that we're in this little microscope and everybody's watching. Actually, they forgot about us, really. But yeah, so that's a great breakthrough. Thank you.
Another thing, also, I remember one time a couple that we support. They were going overseas, and they've been overseas for years now, and they were saying that the organization that they they're going through, a part of what they're raising has to go towards their retirement. It's just like, and it's one of those things where I never even thought about that, and I was like, I was like, that's really cool that they're saying, hey, you need to take care of your future as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually required now. I don't know any organization that wouldn't require that now, and now of course it's college debt, so people can I join and go ahead, Doris. So anyway, so we just sort of we're scratching the surface on budget and finances. So each of these challenges you could break down, and we could invest and say, okay, let's take marriage and family. Or those we have some, my missionaries have needs in the area of marriage and family. What do you think? Yes. Trust me. They do.
And I would say one thing Cyprus did for us is help us get marriage counseling after our first term on
Well,
the
that's a
field.
secret here.
So, I mean, that was a need that we had, but how do you even advertise that as a need? If you were as a class to say, Dave and Doris, what are some of your needs? It would, I mean, I'm beyond embarrassment now, but at the time I would have been very embarrassed to say, we really need some marriage counseling after 4 years on the field. Everything's gotten all mixed up. And yet,
Doris really had issues, yeah.
And it's not something you budget for, because everything we have to budget for, so we didn't budget for it, and Cyprus made that happen for us.
You wanna finish up this?
Yeah. So, we knew we would probably run out of some time, so we've listed some very specific things here for you just to trigger your brain and get you going. You probably think some of these you're already doing, and we knew you were probably already doing. Some might be a little bit different for you, or trigger. What can we do as a class? You know, you might think as an individual, I can't meet this need, this spiritual need, or this social need, or the physical need of the Perez's or the Phillips, but as a class or as a small group, you could help meet one of the needs. And as we said earlier, we're not expecting you to meet all the needs of the Perez's on your own, even as a class, much less as an individual, because there's the wider body of Christ. Cyprus is a church and other churches that support them. But we are encouraging you to listen to the Lord, to use your gifts as you're reading about in 1 Peter. How has God gifted you to use your gifts in this area of caring for missionaries? And I'll stop there for a second. Any questions or comments?
Number 7. Amazon or iTunes gift cards or equivalent. I mean, are those usable around the world, pretty much?
Yeah, we sent one with our allowance, because we had a little bit of extra money and we used it at Amazon credit. And now when they're on their other assignment, she's using that to like download something like a.
Yeah. Sometimes it is when they go out of the country, they use it for something special. But when it first started, no, but now, yes. Our children in Indonesia also ask for these. Yes.
I went to the all-day training with you guys last year, a couple years ago. And the thing that most hit me was the 30-second reply. And I see it on here referencing an article, but can you just touch on that real quick?
Yes, and we didn't we didn't want to inundate you because it's a Sunday school class, not a.
Let me see if I can find the link, and I'll put it up on the board. Or
We can actually send it to you.
Yeah.
We can send it to Dylan, and Dylan can send it out.
on the Facebook page.
I'm glad you brought it up because I wanted to mention it. It's, let's say on number 4 and 3 and 4, when we ask missionaries, what is the one thing that people can do that is most encouraging, is respond to their prayer letters. And because they may send out 100 prayer letters and get one person respond. And it doesn't take but really 30 seconds to respond and say, we can see you put a lot of work in this prayer letter. Thanks. That photo you put really moved me, or I'm going to pray for this. So that's one way you can respond. We encourage you to take it beyond that. Say, okay, I will pray for you. You mentioned something in your prayer letter, but then actually type out, because you've got email nowadays, type out that prayer. It's wonderful when people say, I'm going to pray for you, but when they type it out, this is what I'm praying for you today, and type it out so they can see it. And then even beyond that, follow up in a couple weeks. How did God answer that prayer? Just send a quick email as God brings it to your mind. That's even more encouraging, that somebody actually wants to know how God answered that prayer. What have I forgotten on that?
Include something about yourself.
Yes, thank you. And then share, and this kind of also goes with which I think we put this down somewhere.
Number 18.
Thank you. Mutual care. Share your own needs and concerns. This is what you can pray for me. Because missionaries want to pray for you too. It's, as the 1 Corinthians passage, it's a mutual refreshing of each other. And that makes me really encouraged when people respond to the prayer letters in a way that is mutually refreshing. So, and it only takes a few seconds or a few minutes of your time. And so just respond to prayer letters. That's something. And somebody almost always asks, what if the missionary gets 100 people responding to their prayer letters? They don't have time to respond back. Have you been in this kind of email chain where you're not sure where to stop? So what I say sometimes to people is, when you respond, you can say in your response, there's no need for you to respond to me. And then it takes a burden off of them. They may want to respond to you, but they may not be able to respond to if 100 people respond to their newsletter. I've never heard of anybody that gets 100 responses to the newsletter. But let's say that happens. You can give them that freedom and just say, I just want you to know that you're on my mind. I'm praying for you. You don't have to respond. So maybe we hopefully have created a little more awareness. We've allowed you to dig a little bit into the Bible. So even in 1 Peter, there's a lot there about missionary care. And we're leaving you with some practical tips. And feel free, I don't think we put our email address on there. But
no, if you want, we have a few cards. If you're interested, you can get one, and I think it's got our email. So shall I?
Yeah. And we'll send that link to the 30-second reply to Dylan, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, so don't be offended, hopefully.
Okay.
Oh, we're never like that.
Okay, well, let me pray for you. I'm going to pray 1 Corinthians 15:58, if I can remember for you. Brothers, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your work in the Lord is not in vain.